Many consider the group Tyap to be the progenitor of the so-called Kazan phenomenon, when teenagers massively united into large-scale groups, fought each other for asphalt, divided the territory, and committed various crimes. Antip. One of the leaders of Tyap was Sergei Antipov. He was born in Kazan in the old neighborhood of the city, which has always been considered criminal, on Sukonka. Interestingly, this neighborhood was also where Chaliapin grew up, and in the 57th year of the last century, a large-scale all-union gathering of thieves-in-law took place. Sergei's father was a frontline soldier. He was seriously concussed and had mental problems, as a result of which he often beat his son. When Sergei was 16, he was able to fight back against his father, and since then he has never let anyone offend him. In his youth, Antipov did not smoke and did not drink, although it is said that during his time in prison he smoked tobacco a little. To drugs, treated extremely negatively. The reason is that his friend Sasha Nikolaev, nicknamed Karas, one of the authoritative members of the Boriskovsky organized crime group, died from them. Antipov went to many sports sections. First, he practiced freestyle wrestling, then boxing. There he acquired not only the skills to punch a face, but also acquaintances with all sorts of people. From Sukonka, Sergei moved to the district of Teplokontrol. In 1966, he became famous for beating up so-called intercity drivers. They were chauffeurs who behaved very aggressively and worked in the local automobile economy. Where Antipov moved to, the local authorities were some Romanovs, Leontievs, and Yakovlevs. There were also other authorities: old men, Danila, Valiam, Farid Dundish, Kiam Gimadeev, and Graf. At that time, old men were understood to be those who had returned from the zone or the army. Antipov clashed with some of the authorities of the district. The bold and young Sergei was considered by some to be excessively arrogant. Others, on the contrary, saw him as a fighter and used him for their own purposes. Antip became the leader of the group Tyap around the 60s. Then the teenagers had a rocking gym, a gym on Frezernaya Street. Earlier it was written that Antipov was killed in 1994. This is not true, and it turned out that he is quite alive and healthy. In 2021 and 2023, he even gave interviews to Sasha Sulim, a Russian journalist, and the newspaper Business Online. He still maintains a sporty lifestyle. The Lyap, the group gained its fame in the 1970s, mostly through mass brawls and even murders. The gang was based in Kazan, in the neighborhood of Teplokontrol, a local factory. It is believed that the gang was named Tyap precisely because of the workers at Teplokontrol, who allegedly worked in a sloppy manner. Already in the 70s, the whole of Kazan was divided into spheres of influence. Among them were such well-known groups as Jilka, Kadi Taktash, Tukaevskie, Borisovskie, Novotatarskaya Sloboda, and others. Initially, the group consisted of graduates and participants of schools 114 and 48, which were located in the neighborhood. In total, there were several hundred participants in the youth gang. The groupers had weapons, including firearms, both domestic and foreign-made. The trademark of Tyap was the image of T, K, and a crown. The heads of the gang were 3 people. They were able to create in Kazan the largest teenage gang in the Soviet Union. Yavda. Zavdat Faizrahmanovich Kantimirov. He was a vengeful strongman. He practiced boxing, loved order, and zealously made sure that the code of the Tyaplypovs was carefully observed. He worked at the youth center as an electrician. He was rarely at work, but his bosses did not fire him. They were afraid. He died in 1982. Antip. Sergei Antipov. He was a boxer, did time for robbery and hooliganism. While serving time, he carefully studied the mistakes of different criminal groups, learned how the police work. After his release, this helped to make Tyap so powerful. Skryaba. Sergei Leonidovich Skryabin. A Jew by nationality. He was quite an intelligent man, graduated from a pedagogical university. He was the brain of the group. He created its ideology, put it into practice, thought out various operations. He practiced sambo and had been friends with Zavdat since high school. Antipov created the headquarters of the group. He opened an underground rocking gym. Batteries were used as barbells, a water pipe instead of a tourniquet, and dumbbells were irons. It was here that the business was discussed. Soon the gym became the only place that teenagers could visit in the evening. The authorities turned a blind eye to the underground gym. Young people need something to do. The police did not know what was really going on there. At the gym, there was a group tryout. You had to take a punch and not fall down. Everything in the gang was very serious. It was forbidden to smoke or drink, and you always had to stand up for your own. Tyap had their own distinctive signs. The groupers wore telogoreki and ushanka hats, ears, tied at the top. Such clothes had a practical meaning. They served as an additional defense in a fight. Such uniforms began to be used by other groups, so teenagers from Lyap began to use badges of factory workers, which they attached to their clothes. The gang also had its own transportation. These were motorcycles, which were usually stolen and remodeled. The group became fully formed in 1974. Tyap was the leader among the gangs in Kazan. They almost always came out victorious from fights due to their training. They often used tire irons and rods in fights. Runs. To intimidate the Tyap decided to make so-called runs, slaughtering passers-by along the way. Soon, the group organized a mass brawl in the DK. Later, Yavda proposed a run to the islands, a local resort area. But the police found out about it and the run did not happen. Then, incidentally, Kantimirov was detained and received 1 year of corrective labor. In 1978, Lyap made a run to the Novotatarskiye controlled neighborhood. The teenagers beat and shot at anything alive with firearms. As a result, several dozen people were seriously injured and 2 were killed. The police tried to recruit one of the gang members, one Sergei Danshin. Yavda found out about this and first severely beat Danshin and then killed him. Law enforcers began to keep a close eye on the gang. Yavda and Antip decided to organize mass riots in the city. They thought that then the police would open fire and other gangsters would start rioting all over Kazan. Antip and Skryaba left the city before the event. Only Kantimirov remained. During the run, the bandits smashed everything. The police on a bus tried to stop them, but to no avail. They had to flee, and only 2 officers tried to stop the bandits. As a result, they were seriously wounded. They also fired weapons at the militiamen and threw a grenade in response. No one was killed. The end of the gang. The authorities arrested all those who participated in the pogroms, as well as Skryabin and Antipov. The gang was tried for 15 attempts, 36 robberies, banditry, and 4 murders. The trial took place in 1980 in Kazan. At that time, 30 people were present as defendants. Most of the gangsters received 2 to 10 years in prison, Skryabin and Antipov, 15 years each. Yavda and Brigadier Tazeddinov were sentenced to execution. In 1982, despite numerous requests for clemency, the sentence was carried out. After their release, Skryaba and Antip returned to Kazan, but could no longer restore the gang. They joined other organized crime groups. Sergei Antipov is known to be alive and well and currently lives in the Moscow suburbs, but Skryabin was less fortunate. In 1994, he was killed near his place of residence, in a parking lot.